I wasn't supposed to be at the cemetery that night. Mom had told me to stay home, to finish my homework, to stop wandering around places that remember more than they should. But I couldn't help it. Ever since Dad was buried at Black Hollow Cemetery, something inside me kept pulling me back there, like a string tied to my ribs, tightening every time the sun went down. It started with the calls. The first one came 3 nights after the funeral. My phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. No caller ID. Just silence at first. Then breathing. Slow. Wet. Too close to the microphone. And then a whisper. "Mom, take me home from the cemetery." The voice sounded like mine. I dropped the phone. I didn't answer unknown numbers after that, but the calls kept coming. Same time. Same words. Same broken, trembling whisper. Mom said it was grief. That trauma can twist your mind. But she never heard what I heard. Last night, I decided to prove it wasn't in my head. I walked to Black Hollow just before midnight. The iron gates were open, even though they're always locked after sunset. The wind didn't move. The trees didn't creak. It was like the whole place was holding its breath. Dad's grave was near the back, under a crooked angel statue with no face. The marble headstone looked darker than usual, like something had been spilled over it. I stepped closer. The dirt above the grave wasn't flat anymore. It looked disturbed. Not dug up. Not exactly. Pressed. As if something had been pushing from underneath. My phone buzzed. 2:17 a.m. No caller ID. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it again. But this time, I answered. Silence. Then breathing. And then, clearer than ever. "Mom, take me home from the cemetery." The voice wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from behind me. I turned slowly. At first, I thought it was just another grave marker in the dark. Then it moved. A small figure stood between the tombstones. The shape was my height. My build. My jacket. Its head tilted at the exact angle I always tilt mine when I'm confused. It stepped forward. Its face was my face. But the eyes were wrong. Too deep. Too hollow. Like something was looking out through them from very far away. Its mouth opened. But when it spoke, dozens of whispers came out at once. "Mom, take me home." The ground behind it began to tremble. Graves around us shifted. Soil cracked. And from the open lines in the earth, pale hands began to emerge. Not skeletons. Not corpses. Just hands. Reaching. The thing wearing my face smiled. "You left us here," it said, but now the voice was layered. Overlapping. Impossible. "We are cold." The angel statue above Dad's grave turned its faceless head toward me. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the trees, something much larger moved. Watching. Waiting. And then every buried hand pointed at me at once. "Bring her." The hand shot back into the soil the second I tried to move. Not slowly. Not naturally. They snapped down like trapdoors closing. The cemetery went silent again. Too silent. The thing wearing my face stood 10 feet away now. I hadn't seen it move. It just was closer. Its skin looked wrong under the moonlight. Not decayed. Not pale. Stretched. Like it didn't quite fit. "You came back," it said, but its lips barely moved. The voice seemed to vibrate in the air instead, like it was traveling through the ground rather than sound. "I'm not you," I whispered. It smiled wider than I ever could. "You will be." The soil behind it split open again, not with hands this time. With shapes. Tall. Crooked. Limb-like but bending in too many places. They rose slowly from the graves without disturbing the earth, like shadows pulling themselves upward from where bodies should have been. I stumbled back toward the angel statue. The faceless stone head was now tilted completely downward, facing me. Its blank surface had cracked. A thin black line split the center where a mouth might have been. The figure in front of me reached into its chest. No blood. No wound. Just a hollow opening in its ribs, like a door. From inside, something moved. Something wet. Something breathing. Then it pulled out my phone. The screen was lit. 2:17 a.m. Still. The time hadn't changed. It turned the phone toward me. On the screen was a live video. My house. My bedroom window. And inside, Mom was standing there, frozen, facing the glass. Behind her, the room was dark, but something tall and thin stood in the corner behind her. Its arms were too long. Its head touched the ceiling. It didn't move. It didn't blink. It just watched her. The thing wearing my face tilted its head again. "She doesn't hear us yet," it whispered. "But she will." The tall shapes behind it began to shift closer, their limbs dragging through air that seemed too thick to breathe. I felt pressure in my ears, like descending underwater. "You buried him," it continued. "But he didn't leave alone." The ground beneath my feet softened, not sinking, opening. A crack formed around my shoes, thin at first, then widening in a perfect circle. Cold air rushed up from below. It smelled like damp stone, like something sealed for too long. The creature stepped closer, close enough now that I could see its eyes clearly. There was movement inside them. Not reflections, not light. Movement, like figures pacing in a distant hallway behind glass. "Mom, take me home from the cemetery," it said again, but now it sounded almost pleading. The tall shape on my phone's screen moved. Its head bent sideways. It was listening. And then my phone went black. The crack beneath me widened. And from deep below, I heard my father's voice, calling my name. "Don't answer," Dad's voice whispered from below. The crack in the ground widened into a dark ring around my feet. Cold air poured upward, carrying a smell like wet stone and something older. Something sealed for decades. The thing wearing my face didn't move. It just watched me. "You hear him," it said softly. "He calls you too." The soil beneath me shifted again, but instead of pulling me down, it lowered me, gently, slowly, like an elevator made of earth. The cemetery faded above me. The moonlight thinned into a narrow circle. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me was the faceless angel statue, leaning forward, as if watching something being fed. Then I was below, not in a coffin, not in dirt, in a space carved into stone. A chamber. The walls were lined with wooden coffins standing upright like doors. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Each one slightly open. Breathing. I could hear it now clearly, a laird. Uneven breathing from inside every coffin at once. At the center of the chamber stood Dad's coffin. Only it wasn't sealed. It was open. And empty. "You buried the wrong thing," the voice behind me said. I turned. The thing wearing my face had followed. But now it wasn't alone. The tall, crooked shapes from the graves stood around the chamber, hunched against the ceiling. Up close, they weren't shadows. They were bodies. Stretched. Pulled thin. Their skin looked like wax left too long in the sun, dripping downward in slow motion. Their arms ended in too many fingers. "Every grave here," my double whispered, "is a door." One of the upright coffins creaked open wider. Inside wasn't a body. It was a hallway, a narrow corridor stretching into darkness. Something moved far inside it. Something crawling. Dad's voice came again, closer now. I tried to hold it back. The empty coffin at the center began to fill. Not with a body. With darkness. Thick. Moving. Like liquid shadow rising to the rim. The thing beside me reached out and touched my shoulder. Its hand was cold, but not solid. My skin tingled like static. "He found it first," it said. "Under this place. Beneath the cemetery. Beneath the graves. Beneath us." The walls began to pulse. The upright coffins opened wider. And from each one I saw glimpses, not of hallways now, but of rooms. Bedrooms. Kitchens. Living rooms. Homes. People inside them, frozen, unaware. Each coffin was connected to somewhere. The cemetery wasn't just a place for the dead. It was a network, a root system spreading under the town. Dad's voice broke, strained. I kept it here. The shadow inside the central coffin rose higher. Shapes formed within it, hands pressing against the inside surface. From the dark liquid, a face began to emerge. Not fully human. Not fully anything. Its mouth opened, and dozens of voices spilled out. "Mom, take me home from the cemetery." But this time, they weren't talking to her. They were talking to me, the crooked creatures around the chamber. The coffins opened all at once, not with a loud crash, with a soft, synchronized creak, like 100 doors in a house slowly unlocking. From each one, something stepped halfway into the chamber. They weren't fully formed creatures. They were almost people, shaped like humans, but blurred at the edges, as if unfinished. Their faces shifted constantly, cycling through expressions that didn't belong to them. Fear, grief, confusion, all repeating. The dark figure rising from Dad's coffin solidified further. Its upper body formed first, shoulders, neck, head, but the lower half remained liquid shadow, dripping back into the casket like ink refusing to settle. I held the hinge. Dad's voice echoed through the chamber. The shadow's head tilted unnaturally, cracking slightly as it moved. For as long as I could. The thing wearing my face stepped between me and the coffin. "You understand now," it whispered. "This place needs a keeper." The crooked creatures bent lower. Their elongated fingers scraped softly against stone. The chamber walls pulsed again. I suddenly understood what this was. The cemetery wasn't trapping the dead. It was trapping something else. And the coffins weren't graves. They were doors, thin points between here and somewhere deeper. Something ancient. Something that found entry through loss, through burial, through grief. "You think it takes bodies," my double continued. "But it takes space." One of the half-formed figures from the coffins turned toward me. Its face stabilized for a second. It was Dad's face. Not fully. Just enough to hurt. "It learns shape," the shadow in the coffin said in overlapping voices. "And then it wears it." The chamber temperature dropped sharply. Frost formed along the stone floor. The liquid darkness began climbing out of the coffin, stretching into long tendrils that touched the ground without sound. Dad's voice came again, strained, distant. "It can't leave without being carried." My double stepped closer to me. "If you stay," it said softly, almost kindly, "we go home." Images flashed around the chamber walls, like reflections in polished stone. Mom in the kitchen. Mom sitting on the edge of her bed. Mom standing at my bedroom door, listening for movement that wasn't there. "She misses you," the creature said. "But she won't notice the difference." The shadow behind it expanded, reaching upward like a crown of smoke. The crooked creatures began humming, low, vibrating tones that made the chamber shake. "You take his place," my double said. "You become the hinge, the weight that keeps the doors closed." "And if I don't?" I asked. For the first time, its smile faded. The shadow surged forward suddenly, flooding across the stone floor toward me. "Then we all go home." The chamber trembled violently. Cracks spread across the walls. Through the open coffins, I saw not rooms anymore, but streets. My street. Lights flickering. Windows darkening one by one. The doors were widening. "Daniel." Mom's voice echoed faintly from somewhere impossibly far above. Thin. Fragile, but real. The humming stopped. Every crooked creature froze mid-motion. The shadow flooding across the floor paused at my ankles, rippling like disturbed water. My double turned its head sharply upward. "She came," it whispered. The chamber ceiling cracked. Dust rained down in slow motion, hanging in the cold air like ash. A thin beam of pale light pierced through the stone above. Not moonlight. Headlights. Mom's car. The light trembled as if the vehicle itself were shaking. "She shouldn't be here," the shadow in the coffin hissed in layered voices. The beam widened. Stone split open further, revealing the disturbed soil above. I could see the outline of a figure kneeling at the grave. Mom. She was digging with her bare hands. Her face streaked with tears. "Daniel." She screamed again. "Answer me." The chamber walls began to destabilize. The upright coffins flickered, the visions inside them breaking. Like static-filled screens. The creature wearing my face stepped in front of me. "If she pulls you out," it said urgently, "the doors open fully." The shadow surged higher from the coffin, forming a towering mass now brushing the ceiling. Within it, faces twisted in and out, strangers, neighbors, classmates, my father. "You are the hinge," Dad's voice whispered faintly from inside the darkness. You must choose. The crooked creatures began crawling upward along the walls toward the crack in the ceiling. Their elongated fingers stretched toward the opening. The light from above grew brighter as Mom dug faster. Soil collapsed downward in chunks. The shadow recoiled from the beam but did not retreat. It stretched sideways instead, seeking the coffins. The doors. If they opened at once. I understood. It didn't need to escape physically. It needed a path. Through grief. Through recognition. Through someone being brought back. The thing wearing my face leaned close. If you go up, it said, almost gently, I go with you. Its eyes were no longer hollow. They were full of movement now, like something pacing desperately behind glass. Mom's hand broke through the soil above. Her fingers brushed mine. Warm. Alive. The shadow screamed, a sound like metal tearing underwater. The crooked creatures lunged for the opening. Without thinking, I grabbed the edge of Dad's empty coffin. It was still hollow. Still waiting. I looked at my double. It stared back at me. And for a brief second, it looked afraid. You don't have to, it whispered. Mom's hand gripped mine tightly. Daniel, I've got you. The shadow surged upward in a final violent wave. The coffins behind me began to slam shut one by one, but not fast enough. The crack in the ceiling widened. The doors were splitting. I had seconds. If I let her pull me up, everything buried here would rise with me. If I stayed, the hinge would hold. The shadow reached my chest. Cold flooded my lungs. I let go of her hand. Not because I wanted to. Because I had to. For a split second, her fingers tightened around mine so hard it hurt. Her eyes locked with mine through the collapsing soil, wide. Terrified, refusing to understand. Daniel, no. The shadow surged upward between us like a black wave. Cold tore through my chest, stealing the air from my lungs. The chamber roared as the crooked creatures shrieked in rage, their elongated limbs thrashing against the walls. I forced myself backward, into the coffin, into the hollow space that had once held my father. The darkness swallowed me instantly, not suffocating, not crushing, anchoring. The moment my back touched the interior, the shadow snapped toward me violently, as if pulled by gravity. It flooded inside the coffin, wrapping around my arms, my legs, my ribs. Pain exploded through my body, not sharp, but deep, ancient, like something pressing into the marrow of my bones. Above, the crack in the ceiling sealed with a thunderous crash. Mom's scream was cut off. The beam of headlights vanished. The chamber fell silent. Every coffin door slammed shut in perfect unison. The crooked creatures froze mid-motion, then slowly crumbled into dust, collapsing into thin grey piles that drifted across the stone floor. The shadow coiled tightly around me, compressing, testing, searching. You chose, it whispered through dozens of fading voices. The walls stopped pulsing. The cold steadied. The upright coffins no longer breathed. Everything stilled. I couldn't move. I couldn't feel my hands. But I wasn't alone inside the darkness. Dad's presence lingered, faint, like warmth left in a room after someone steps outside. You did it, his voice murmured. The shadow shrank. Not gone. Contained. It pressed itself against the inside edges of the coffin, as if restrained by invisible boundaries. Its surface rippled occasionally, forming faces that dissolved before they could become clear. You are the hinge now, Dad said softly. I felt the weight settle. Not physical weight. Responsibility. The doors, the countless unseen doors beneath the town, quieted. No more movement behind them. No more pressure pushing outward. The cemetery above returned to silence. Time passed. Minutes. Hours. Maybe days. There was no light in the chamber anymore. Only stillness. But through the stone above, faint vibrations reached me. Footsteps. Voices. Police. Neighbors. Mom. Crying. They never found an opening. The soil had sealed completely. No sign of collapse. No sign of me. Only disturbed dirt and an empty night. Inside the coffin, I couldn't breathe. But I didn't need to. The shadow stirred once more, weaker now. It tried to form my face again. It couldn't hold the shape. You will weaken, it murmured faintly. Someone will grieve again. Someone will dig. I tightened my grip on the edges of the coffin, and for the first time, I understood what Dad had endured all those years. Not death. Guarding. The chamber slept. Time stopped meaning anything inside the coffin. There was no hunger, no sleep, no heartbeat, only pressure. The shadow never fully disappeared. It coiled along the inner walls of the stone chamber like oil clinging to cracks, occasionally testing the edges, pressing against the unseen boundaries. I had become. At first, it was violent. It pushed. It mimicked voices. It replayed memories. Mom crying at the kitchen table. Dad teaching me how to ride a bike. The funeral. Each memory distorted slightly, as if something was studying them from the inside. You will weaken, it kept whispering. But I didn't, because I could still hear her. Faint vibrations filtered through. Layers of earth and stone, footsteps near the grave. Sometimes during the day, often at night. She came almost every evening. She would sit beside the headstone and talk, not to the grave, to me. I know you're not gone, she would say. I feel it. The shadow stirred every time she spoke. Grief was its doorway. Hope was its crack. Weeks passed, or months. I couldn't tell. The chamber stayed sealed. The coffins did not open. The town above continued breathing, unaware of what rested beneath it. Then one night, 2:17 a.m., the shadow surged violently. Not upward, outward. Somewhere in the network of buried doors, something had shifted. A new grave. Fresh soil. Fresh sorrow. The chamber trembled as a distant coffin creaked open. A weak point. The shadow rushed toward it like water toward a broken dam. I felt it pulling, testing my hold. You cannot guard forever, it hissed. The distant door widened. Through the darkness, I sensed a new presence above, a grieving family, standing over newly turned earth. The pattern was repeating. I understood then. This wasn't a single prison. It was a system, each generation passing the weight to the next. The hinge doesn't last forever. The shadow tore at the boundary again. The distant coffin split further open. Cold air rushed through unseen tunnels. And for the first time since I sealed myself inside, I felt myself slipping. Above, far away, a phone began to ring. 2:17 a.m. Mom answered. Hello. Silence. The shadow focused sharply. It pushed toward her voice. Through the thinning crack. Through grief. Through love. I forced everything I had left into holding the door. The chamber cracked. Stone splintered. The shadow screamed as if being burned. On the phone, a whisper formed. Not layered. Not distorted. Just mine. Mom, don't come. There was a pause. Her breathing trembled. Daniel. The shadow lunged again. The distant grave split open completely. I felt the weight shifting away from me. Moving. Transferring. The system correcting itself. Somewhere else. Another coffin closed. Another presence anchored. Another child choosing to stay. The pressure inside my chamber eased. The shadow recoiled violently, shrinking back into the coffin walls. Silenced again. And another voice will whisper, Mom, take me home from the cemetery.